Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Good, and joining me, as always, is my go-to podcast compadre, Mr. Joe Lever. Joe, I'm calling you in from across the hills. Charge!
Coming in hot, Jimmy, for another Critical Reviews podcast. Happy to be with you, pal. How's it going yourself?
Just fine, thank you. How are you? Just sipping that monster.
Excellent. Absolutely excellent.
Well, we definitely have a new toy, which is great. If people really like these, I will consider getting a mixer and all that stuff, which I've thought about doing for a while now, so maybe this will just, Joe's just like pushing me into it for Christmas or Black Friday. I'll just be like, fine, I'll buy it. Dunk.
There you go. There you go. A little peer pressure, sometimes good can come of it.
Yeah, that's the hope anyway. But thank you, everybody, for joining us here again. We're also, as you guys probably tell if you're watching this, we're side by side, and we normally aren't side by side. Google Hangouts changed to like Google Meet or something else. I don't know. As Joe said before the show, every time I feel like I get a good grasp on how these things work, they change it. And I'm like,
Thanks, Google.
Thanks, Google. But anyway, thank you for joining us. And if you're just listening, welcome as well. This week, under kind of an idea that Joe had, we decided that there wasn't a ton of news out there right now that we want to go over, maybe some more next week, but we want to talk about a little show known as The Mandalorian Season 2. Now, we're only 4 episodes in, about the halfway point, so it's going to be kind of a mid-season review, what we think thus far. And these are the first 4 episodes of the season. I think there should be 8. I could be wrong. I think there's normally 8. I don't know if there'll be 10, but I'd love to be wrong. 2 more episodes would be wonderful.
Close enough.
But anyway, so for people who haven't seen the first season of The Mandalorian and or the second season so far up to this point, spoiler warning for you, just so you know, because we're going to talk about Mandalorian, the child, other things. So maybe come back to this.
Consider the switch flipped.
It's been flipped. Perfect. Now I don't have to put that in.
Okay, I know you normally add that in, but I just saw the opportunity.
It's great. It's great. No, I love it. But we're going to go through episode by episode. So for some reason you haven't caught the most recent one, which is The Siege, I believe, then we will let you know when it gets to that point. We'll be like, all right, we're going into that one. So let's just get into the first episode here, which at the end of season 2, we kind of had Mando taken off with the child. Basically, his new quest is to return the child to the Jedi. And he has this Grand Moff who is kind of on his tail, who has the Darksaber, which for people who watched Clone Wars, they know that the Darksaber is like a black lightsaber that is basically it's like a symbol of like you're the leader of Mandalore, the Mandalorians. And that's kind of like, it's a big deal in the Clone Wars and in Rebels later on as well. So we kind of see him with that. And he's kind of trailing them. So that's kind of like the overarching plot. When you say, Joe, it's kind of like he's trying to get the child back to, the Jedi, and this guy's kind of around. So basically he's trying to get to find other Mandalorians, and the first place he thinks of is Tatooine, where he's heard a Mandalorian is present. And a lot of us who kind of know the show and know of Star Wars, the first person we think of is obviously the bounty hunter known as Boba Fett. Now, Boba Fett is not a true Mandalorian. I know people will probably comment on this if I don't say that. Not a true Mandalorian, but someone wearing Mandalorian armor, Boba Fett's armor, is seen on Tatooine, so he's like, I guess I'll just go back there. You know what? I'll give it to him. He's taking a shot in the dark here, but he has other leads. Heads back to Tatooine. It's such a Western now, Joe. Like, if it wasn't a Western before, it clearly is now, because like you get this cool intro with this kind of like fight ring where he basically leaves this dude to die, which I love that whole sequence. If you remember in the very beginning, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But
it's right up my alley.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Exactly. Yeah.
He leaves him in an alley.
I love that. So good, man.
Yeah. I had a little dark, ominous, and what are my favorite words again?
Gritty.
Crap.
Gritty,
ominous, dark, all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the classic Batman Begins kill where he's like, I don't have to kill you, but I don't have to save you either kind of situation, which is basically like, I'm killing you just by like shooting that light and all those like creatures coming to kill that dude. But that's not the Western part I'm talking about. I guess later on when he's rolling into that town in Tatooine, and he's on his little speeder slowly going through town, and everybody's kind of looking at him like he's almost riding a horse into an old Western town, and they're all just like, oh, you're not from around here kind of type.
Well, the funny thing is, you mentioned it's kind of like a Western now. I mean, excuse me, I guess the way George Lucas had kind of painted Mandalorians in the beginning was that they were kind of inspired by um, like Dirty Harry, things of that nature, and even the helmet. The whole idea behind the weird slanted lens and no face kind of a thing was because he wore the brim of his hat always tended to cover his eyes, and so there's a whole thing like that, and kind of they wanted to make a space cowboy essentially, and that's kind of where he came up with the idea for Mandalorians and kind of their style without giving them full on spurs and stuff like that. But yeah, so coincidentally, I mean, there's a bit of a through line there, and there was some inspiration for Mandalorians from that. So,
yeah, well, even Boba Fett's like the only one who actually does have spurs. Like, it's almost like they put a belt on him, which is weird.
I forget. I guess he did. I never laid eyes on him.
They don't. You just hear him. It's more so in Empire Strikes Back when he walks in Cloud City. You hear it a little bit. But it's interesting that you brought up Dirty Harry, because Dirty Harry is basically like a modern cop that's like a cowboy, even though it's Clint Eastwood, and Clint Eastwood's just like a cowboy, basically. He's just like a 6-shooter and walking around. But yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that. That's really interesting, because the Mandalorian look, or the armor, is obviously very iconic now, and people always loved Boba Fett because of the look, even though if you do watch just Return of the Jedi and Empire, you might think, yeah, he's competent in Empire, he gets, Han and all that stuff, he kind of like hides out and finds them, but in Return of the Jedi, he kind of goes out a little bit unceremoniously, where he gets hit in the back by a blinded Han Solo and goes right in the Sarlacc pit. But it's okay, because he's coming back, because if we fans can do one thing, is we can resurrect a character even if we're pretty sure they're dead. I'm looking at you, Darth Maul. You were chopped in half and fell down a hole. It's like he's back. He's on. But
everything from the waist down was cauterized instantly, so it's okay.
He was fine. He's got robot legs now. Spoiler alert for Darth Maul in general. Anyway, but so we get to town and we see that, like, Mando's there. He's trying to find some information about this person, and they're like, "Oh, you're probably talking about the Marshal," because he's like, "All right, I'm looking for somebody who looks just like me, who's got my armor." And somebody walks in, and you can tell the armor doesn't fit, because Boba Fett isn't the tallest guy in the world, but this character is actually played by. Oh, Joe's like, "I'm done with being married." Throw the ring on the ground.
It slips off a lot, sorry.
That's okay. This is not a metaphor for anything. So Timothy Olyphant is playing this character of the Marshal, and you can tell, like, it's not fitting on this guy. Timothy Olyphant's kind of a taller dude, and they kind of barter for this thing eventually, even though in my mind all I'm thinking is Mando, he wants this armor, right? And he's like, I gotta do whatever it takes to get this armor back from this dude who doesn't belong to him. I don't know why Mando doesn't just plug him right there, because there's like a moment where they're about to duel. I was like, I think Mando's going to win this almost no matter what. But the armor on the Marshal isn't so bad. It's seen better days. It's been shot up a bunch and been in a Sarlacc pit and stuff. But basically what he does is agrees to help him take care of this big monster that kind of ruins their little rumble. And there's this thing called the Krayt Dragon that has been terrorizing the town and the nearby Tusken Raiders, and they kind of have to band together to take this thing down. Which, I don't know, Joe, if you were like me when they were, working to take this thing down in the first part, they had this like elaborate plan. Like they kind of team up with like the townspeople who hate the Tusken Raiders because the Tusken Raiders have ruined their lives, and the Tusken Raiders have ruined the townspeople's lives, or vice versa, I should say. And they have to come together to fight this thing. And they have like their different styles, which I like seeing the Tusken Raiders work with Mando, because one of Mando's things is, for some reason, he knows like Tusken Raider hand signs and like how their language. Like that's one of his qualities and his traits that's in season 1 as well that I love, because he's like, I'm communicating with them, and he'll do these little hand signs, and they'll just kind of like, oh yeah. They have this big complex plan of like how to drop this massive, probably one of the biggest creatures we've seen in Star Wars. And it's like, we got to get it out of its cave that used to be a Sarlacc pit. And we're going to have it like go over these explosives, and it's going to blow up its belly, because the sand people know that its belly is a weak point. I don't know, man. All I was thinking is the way they ended this is the way I would have started it, unfortunately. I would have strapped a bunch of bombs to some banthas. I love you, banthas. But I would have been like, send 2 or 3 out. We'll be done in like a half hour. Like, it won't take long.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I think, it's interesting that, what was that thing called?
The Krayt Dragon.
The crate dragon, yeah. So presumably it ate the Sarlacc that was in the pit.
Yeah, apparently. Or sometimes they move, but I think it did eat this one. So it's obviously it's big. It's chunky.
Yeah. No, it was an interesting episode. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I agree with you in that I would have ended it the way they started it, or started it the way they ended it. My bad. I mean, if it's got a hard shell 180 degrees around it, you would think, I mean, it's burrowing, it's going through rock and sand and all this. What makes you think the belly's going to be so vulnerable? Mm-hmm. Probably not. Let's just go with the sure bet, right?
Yeah.
Bombs inside, burst outward, perfect. Even if it doesn't break the shell, it ruins everything inside.
Which is
done.
Yep.
So, little oversight on their part, and they were taking a big risk hoping that it would fall in the exact spot it needed to, which was stupid. I enjoyed, for the episode as a whole, I kind of liked having a guest star like Timothy Olyphant. First of all, I like Timothy Olyphant.
He's great.
But he fits that kind of role really well, so I think it was good casting to have a guest on like that, to put him in those boots. It was a perfect setting and character for him ultimately. And I think his banter with the other characters in the show, including Mando, were very well done. So I kind of enjoyed that, and I don't mind seeing more of that as long as they do it tastefully.
Sure.
I just want it to become like a barrage of cameos by this person, that person, the other person,
sure.
To where it's bearable or it's clearly, forced on you. But I think this was tastefully done. It was nice. It was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. So
yeah, I feel like it's on the edge of it where he fits in there enough, but I think it works better if you bring like more prosthetics or something. Like I didn't know until recently that Horatio Sands from SNL was the blue fish guy, which we'll talk about later, who's in the first episode of Mandalorian and is in this last one we just saw. And I was like, I never knew, or other stars who've been in here where it's like, I have spoken, and I'm like, I would not, like, I hear the voice, but I don't see the person. Where Timothy Olyphant, I look at him like, you're on the edge of not belonging because you're like, I know you well enough. All I'm thinking is like, oh, it's Justified. I'm like, we're doing Justified space. But I'm with you. I know what you mean. Where it's like if you brought in 2 men, like it's who's this week's big star? It'd be like a talk show almost, where you just kind of like this round robin of just all these big people. And
no.
Pull away from it, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, I thought it was a pretty good episode, and I think it was very purposeful and intentional to make it end the way it did, and kind of build up to it. Maybe they just weren't thinking in the moment, but there's that great that great shot where they tie up a bantha, and there's a Tusken Raider who's like trying to run away from the cave, and then you just see it come out, and you can tell like the burrow is going towards the Tusken Raider, just eats it, and then the bantha's still just kind of standing there like it's like, yeah. I don't know what happened. It's it's a pretty good episode, and it's very self-contained. I wonder if they did that too very purposefully for like the first episode of this season, just in case there are people
whether you're ripping across,
whether you're ripping across the deserts of Tatooine, this speeder is for you. No, I just played it off. But I wonder if they did that intentionally, so that way, if there are people out there who haven't seen the first season and they saw that recap, they can just enjoy this first episode. It's pretty self-contained. And you could be like, this is what the show is. There's a lot of episodes in here that don't necessarily go like one right to the other. They're kind of just their own little world. And then at the very end, when he gets the helmet and the armor, which there's a good chance, I'm sure Timothy Olyphant could get it back, if he needed it. But I keep the Marshal, I should say. But we get a shot of good old Boba Fett, presumably watching Mandalorian take off, or Mando with his Mandalorian armor. And that's kind of been a big tease for a long time. That he's going to be back in the show, along with potentially Rex, who also people know from the Clone Wars and then Rebels, as well as a clone that was saved from Order 66 and grew up. And they kind of pushed him in a way to Return of the Jedi, because there's an older guy who's fighting with the rebels on the moon of Endor, and he's got a big white beard. And people Star Wars is like, that's Rex, and it was like, is it always Rex? Like, and they're like, yes, it was. And I'm like, okay, so I'm cool with it. I'm interested to see Boba Fett in there, but 4 episodes in, and we've only seen that little glimpse of him. I'm kind of surprised. I really thought they were going to try to like go hard with that right away, but that's all right. Take
There's
time.
a lot of rumors about other characters as well right now. I mean, I hear talks about. I mean, of course, they're very enthralled followers and people that are really overanalyzing this stuff. But people are talking about like Mace Windu. I'm hearing things about the alien girl with the weird head thing.
Ahsoka Tano. I'm sure she'll be in here.
Yeah. And so there's theories about a lot of characters. Obviously, no spoilers. We'll probably talk about it later, but maybe even Palpatine, things of that nature.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. So anywho, I don't know. Maybe it was just a tease for something future. Maybe not even the Mandalorian. Like, hey, Boba Fett's still around. Congratulations, fans.
There's also a rumor that they might be kicking off potentially a Boba Fett series. The only issue I think you have there is like if you run 2 of these shows at the same time, people might get burned out quicker on them. Like if you do an Ahsoka Tano series, that makes a little more sense because it's like a Jedi thing. It's pretty different. But if you do like another bounty hunter show, I don't know. It just might be tougher unless you set it back during like original trilogy stuff. Because I think that's the hard part with a lot of these Star Wars things to keep track of. With like the Marvel stuff, for the most part, it usually moves like forward. With Star Wars, they're just kind of like, it's here. And you're like, where is it? And you're like, it's between episodes 3 and 4. And you're like, okay. Like, it's like, I love Rogue One, but even then I was like, okay, I know where it is, but over time, I think it's going to get more and more tricky. But yeah, anyway, we'll get to those. But Palpatine, man, I would... Mandalorian, you fight for me now, Mando. I would love it, man. I would be stoked. I don't think they'll do that because I think he's tucked away, but we'll get to the reason why we think potentially he's in there. Episode 2 is the one that seems a little bit more divisive. Some people really didn't like it. This is my arachnophobia warning for folks. If you haven't seen this episode yet and you're still listening to us, episode 2, it doesn't start off creepy, but it kind of ends creepy. There's this kind of chase with some X-Wings, which is kind of fun. It's fun that every episode feels really different, I think. Like each episode, you never know what you're going to get. But this one is him kind of running away from some what do they call it, like New Republic pilots or whatever, and he's like, I don't like have the beacon or the code that you're looking for, and he's like, I'm gonna run. So he ends up getting trapped on this ice planet, and he gets attacked by these kind of big spider monsters, which we've seen some of these, I think, in Star Wars Rebels, so some people might recognize them. But during this time, he's also shuttling like this frog woman who has some babies, or I should say some like hatchlings that are like tucked away little eggs in this jar. And of course, the child keeps eating them when when no one's looking, which is kind of messed up. Kind of a monster.
Yeah, it all
It's a creepy little thing. And it even eats, the child even eats one of like the spider eggs before all the spiders start to hatch simultaneously. But yeah, that one's very much like a creepy, like, Mando has to fight his way out, and I was worried I wouldn't see the flamethrower joke, because I was like, when in doubt, flamethrower out, because like when he sees some of them, he like lights it up like at the beginning, and then it's like off screen, and you can kind of see the light, and then he runs around a corner, and you're like, oh, he must have got some of them. But later on, you see him like he's in the cockpit trying to shut the door, and they're trying to come through, and he's like just burning them all. And I was like, I was like, I don't know how the fuel works on that thing, but I love it. But they like destroy his ship like quite a bit. X-Wing pilots show up, they save the day, and they're kind of like, hey, don't be weird, like you should play by our rules. And then they like take off. What did you think of this episode, man? It's a different one because it's very like the pacing is different, or it's very more like it tries to kind of be like a horror show with a little bit of action in the beginning, kind of.
Yeah, I don't know how horror-esque it was, but it felt like a short episode, to be honest. Sure. And there's not much as far as like development or furthering any overarching plot line, or nothing to the overall story in general. Yeah. That I got from it anyway. It was kind of okay. My favorite parts of it, I mean, the spiders were cool and him fighting them off and all that. Okay, fine. Mm-hmm. Frog Lady was weird. I appreciate the practical.
Yeah, me too.
Outfit and all that's fine, but my favorite part had to have been the aerial sequence when he's running from the X-Wings. I thought that was really cool, like the aerial not combat in this instance, but just the high speed chase essentially, and it was kind of cool. It was very well done and looked great.
Which I want to bring up a quick point to you because I don't know if we talked about this. I like the name. I'm not a huge fan of the design of the Razor Crest. I feel like that thing will get shot out of the sky because it almost looks like a pseudo cargo ship. I'm like, how are you fighting anybody with this thing, Mando? I'm like, I love you, but I'm like, what is
honestly, how maneuverable can something like that be as opposed to like an X-wing or even TIE fighter?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I know that he's transporting bounties, so I think that maybe is the kind of the point. I just always think it's so interesting when they show it like kind of flying really fast or kind of dodging around. I'm like, he's gonna get shot. Like he's gonna get shot down.
It's a powerful ship. We'll give it that, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Powerful,
big
shiny.
Old engines on there.
Yeah. Well, this is the episode 2 where he kept wanting to go to sleep. He was like, he's talking to the frog lady, and he's kind of like, you know what, he's like, we'll see how bad it is at night. The temperature should drop. We'll kind of see what our prospects are. And he's like, just go get some rest. I'm like, Mando, what are you doing? You're gonna take a nap? You're like trapped on the snow planet, and like the hull has been breached. You're just like, I'll just wake up later. And this reminds me that if we were in Star Wars, Joe, we'd all have to be amazing mechanics because apparently if you get trapped anywhere, you got to know how to fix your ship because you have to make it freaking space proof. And I'm like, I don't know how you would make that airtight seal after they destroyed the windshields of like I was like, Mando, how are you gonna? He's like, I made the cockpit sealed tight. And I'm like, won't the rest of the ship like kind of rip apart, or is that?
One would think.
I don't know. They take off and they land without fire sometimes. There must be some sort of shielding going on. But yeah, kind of a weird episode. Kind of like a world-building episode. Kind of creepy. But like you said, I too appreciate the practicality, especially of the frog lady. And she like takes over one of that droid he destroyed earlier on. I thought she was going to like resurrect it or something. But she's like talking through that droid. And I was like, oh, is she going to like strap a head on like her body, you know, like tie it there and she just talk through it the whole time? I was like, oh, this could be kind of funny. But she's like, nope. I'm going to take my babies and we're going to go chill out in this hot spring in this icy cave. I was like, that's a bold move, mama.
Did you find it odd at all that those X-Wing pilots could merely just show up and, just,
sad
like... It was a bunch of that and they took out all those spiders.
Yeah.
All of them.
They're very good. Very good.
Like, man, like sharpshooters, pilots. I mean, what aren't they?
Yeah, that's true.
I actually, that was like, no way. And at first, I thought it was going to be something a little more epic or climactic than them. So I was surprised at that. And I don't know. I mean, I guess, whatever.
I like that they kept the old uniforms for the pilots that are kind of baggy and saggy. Like, they're not super flattering. They're like big orange with like a white stripe and stuff.
Yeah, they look like they're about to get on a creeper and crawl under the engine of a SUV and change the oil for you, you know?
Yeah. I was angry that big spider didn't die to Mando's cool 3-throw explosion. He threw one up while it was chasing him, and he threw 2 on the ground. He blew up the one above first, and then it fell down, and then he blew up the other ones next to it. I was like, that was cool. He used like multiple explosions to bring this thing down, and then it showed back up, and I was like, how are you gonna get out of here? Your windshields, man. Like I get freaked out about this fictional thing, so obviously they're pulling me in, and I'm like, how do they?
They were well done.
Yeah. But that was kind of like that episode felt very contained and it didn't really have anything to do with the rest of the story. It's basically like the vampire zombie episodes of Smallville. We got to have them in there somewhere, you know, Joe. You just got to kind of inject them where it doesn't really look.
It was better than that.
Yeah,
was
exactly.
A bad year.
That's why I tell people when they're like, oh man, that wasn't a great episode. I'm like, but as far as television goes, like, it's hard. It's like you're watching a mini movie and you're like, well, that was kind of a weird little mini movie, but it was, man, like you look at the budget, like this thing drips the budget. You know what I mean? Like in every shot. And everything looks just so good. You're like, you're like, oh man.
It's interesting with the behind the scenes stuff, the creative ways that they've gone about making these kind of epic scenes happen. And they have a room that essentially is like a 360 degree. It's like a trellis mounted ceiling of LED panels, and then the wall. They project an image onto the wall that's like, I think it's like 270 degrees. It's not 360.
Yeah.
But they've gone and they've actually shot these locations, and then they come back and they can do it all on stage against the screen. So like all his like desert sequences, a lot of stuff that's on other planets, they've actually gotten harvested location shots, and they project that, and it's also on the ceiling, and they create their setting. It's pretty cool.
Using gaming technology. It's so nuts. It's pretty dang cool. You're welcome, video games, doing it. Anyways, that's episode 2. Like I said, kind of one of the more divisive episodes. Some people didn't seem to like it. A lot of people, just because they're probably freaked out, they're probably just like, it won't be that weird. And then it was a bunch of tons and tons of thousands of spider creatures. They're not full spiders. Anyway, then we get to move to episode 3, which this one is very much, I think, you probably should have watched Clone Wars or Rebels episode, because stuff happens, and if you don't know these characters, you might be like, who are these people? Basically, Mando gets saved. Mando and baby, God, I keep on calling that Mando and the child. I'm specific. I'm that person who doesn't call it that thing. But anyway, they get saved by some other Mandalorians. I think Bo-Katan is her name. And they are actual Mandalorians from Mandalore, the planet of Mandalore. And they find him, they save him, and they basically talk to him. They're like, hey, you might not understand this, but like, we are actually from Mandalore. We are not the types to keep our helmets on all the time. You were probably raised in this kind of like religious sect, or this cultist, basically, group of Mandalorian followers who are like never going to take your helmet off ever. And it's funny because it kind of paints Mando in this like almost crazy guy light, like in the first season.
Drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, like in the first season, you see other Mandalorians like, this is the way, and like he meets real Mandalorians. They're like, that's not okay, dude. Like, that's fine, but they're like,
well, is that what it is, or it's just two factions of Mandalorians? Some are more by the old book, and some are by the new, kind of a thing.
I think so. And again, as they said, it's more of like a religious-y type. That would be like, and if you're. Did you hear that? That's the sound it makes every
time he takes the helmet. Klutz.
I knew one of these times you're gonna hit a button. I was like, oh god, Joe's house is on fire. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting to have that kind of comparison. And they talk to him. They're like, hey, we need you to help us with something. And he's like, yeah, I'm not really gonna, like, thanks for helping me, but I don't really know. I don't want to do this. And they're like, we need you to help us stop this like Imperial shipment of weapons that are going to basically hurt our cause. And then you get all of them kind of working together as kind of, they leave the child at home, which I love when he does that, because I'm always like, oh, I would be so worried, but I like when he does that, because I'm like, he doesn't have to be like, oh, where's the kid? Like, he's just kind of like, all right, I left the kid at daycare, I'm going to go do this. And he does that a few times so far, but he goes up and they basically just like wipe out a ton of stormtroopers in a cool sequence. I love like watching, especially like a bunch of Mandalorians in that armor, kind of like rolling through that ship, just like gunning everybody down, and you could like just hear everybody. And there's one moment that I really love, and it's really quick, and you got to hear it. And they're like, this is one commander. He's like talking to the bridge, and he's like, "We have them trapped. They're in the compartment control bay." And from the bridge, they're like, wait, where did you say they are? And he's like, the compartment control. And then like the back of the ship opens up because they had access to that. So all these guys go flying out the back, and you're like, oh, but yeah, so they basically just rip through these guys because they're wearing armor that could just be like, ding, just like blasters just bounce off it basically. But yeah.
Now, what was the real motivation behind getting to that ship, Jimmy?
The real motivation is they also wanted to get those firearms, those weapons for themselves, right? Wasn't that the whole thing?
So what's her name again? The redhead?
Bo-Katan, I believe.
Bo-Katan, yeah. Her real motivation is she's some sort of descendant that has a right to the Darksaber.
Yes, that was.
And her whole underlying motive is to take me to Darth.
To the Grand Moff, the Giancarlo.
What was his name?
Esposito.
It's not Darth.
No, it's Grand Moff. It's Moff something. I'll look it up.
Moff Gideon.
Joe Clutch.
And he's got the Darksaber, and she's, underlying motive there is to get that back because she's like the rightful heir to it, kind of a thing. From what I gathered. But what about the start of this episode?
Landing on Mon Calamari with all the squid people and all the Admiral Akbar lookalikes.
Ships and tatters, barely made it there, right?
Yep.
Then he pays to have it repaired, and it's probably just as bad looking as when he sent it to him. They like patched it together with nets and seaweed.
Yeah, pretty much. And then it's kind of like, I was thinking about bringing that up at the beginning of the next episode, because that's kind of like the reason the next episode happens, because he's like, well, this was not a great patch job. But one nice thing happens. The frog people meet up with each other. And I was like, okay, thankfully one good thing in the show happens, because most of the time it's like a sad, like, oh, that animal died or something else happened. And I was like, is he ever gonna, is she gonna make it? And she does.
But so he goes to that little pub and whatnot. He goes to that pub and they point him out to this captain of a ship or that crew, and then they get him on the ship. But they're apparently somehow the imps have influence there. They wanted to, I don't know what their motive was, like, knowing that Mando would go in after the child when they push the container, the hovering bulb in there. And so he goes in there, then they lock him in thinking that whatever creature they've got in there will eat him, and then they can collect the child and move on, deliver it to the imps, and be all good, right?
No, they just want the Beskar. They basically wanted to kill him.
Oh, yeah, it was just for the Beskar, wasn't it?
Yeah, everybody wants that Beskar.
Yeah, because I was kind of wondering... Yeah, you're right. There was no reason for the child. They threw it in. Yeah. All right. But it's kind of an interesting start. Don't know who you can trust, kind of a deal, and all that. And
it's the galaxy.
And they set that up well. Your mindset is there, so you don't necessarily trust like these Mandalorians that he meets and such. So I mean, they kind of, they set you in that mentality, and it's kind of nice because you should be cautious, right? You don't know who you can trust regardless of the armor they're wearing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a Star Wars thing. I remember in Solo, which is not a completely beloved movie. I actually like Solo. I think it's pretty good. I forget, is it Beckett?
I did too.
His name. He's like, he tells Han, he says, always expect to be, he's like, always expect everyone to betray you, because then you'll never be disappointed. I was like, that's such a great, it's such a good Star Wars line, because he's totally right. I mean, that even harkens way back to Empire, when you meet Lando and you're like, man, it's been the rebels, they could have been on the run. Hey, they met this nice dude. This is pretty good. He owns this place basically, and then you're like, oh, he's a bad guy, and you're like, oh no, so yeah, I think that's good. When they throw the baby in there, I don't know, the child. Dang it, the child, when, I don't know, every time it senses danger, even in the first episode, it is quick on the trigger with that little egg pod thing, because it can just hit that thing in a half second and be enclosed. Because there's been a few times I'm like, how did it? Man, it's force sensitive. I guess it's bad things are happening.
And unfortunately, that time that egg pod thingy it wasn't enough.
Wasn't enough. It got saved. I don't know what that other Mandalorian did underneath the water. It was one of those classic something jumps into water and then comes up with it, and you're like, what did you do down there? It's like, I saved it. That's all that matters. And you're like, all right, you did your job. You did some blasting underwater. Joe, my question to you was because you didn't watch Clone Wars, was that confusing at all when the other Mandalorian showed up?
Yeah, it was. I guess in what way? At first I thought, oh, great. Okay, he found what he was looking for. Perfect. And then, the no helmets thing and all that, it's like, oh, they're kind of a conflicting faction of Mandalore, a different faction of Mandalorians. It might not turn out so great. Plus, they have some ulterior motives that don't necessarily align well with his end goals. So, confusing for me. I guess not totally.
Okay.
Maybe confusing being the wrong word.
So so you were okay with it? You were fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
certainly.
If you're ever interested, you could watch certain arcs of the Clone Wars and maybe a little bit of Rebels to get a little bit more backstory, especially on the Darksaber and stuff, which shout out to a group that doesn't need a shout out. How it should have ended. They did a great ending to Mandalorian Season 1 where Moff Gideon's in that TIE fighter and Mando's on the top of it. And they're saying, why didn't he just turn on that Darksaber and just stab Mando through the chest, right through the, to the TIE fighter. I was like, yeah, it's probably would have been my opening gambit, because you wouldn't see it coming, and I don't think Beskar is going to stop that. I don't know if it can. But anyway, so that's episode 3. Yeah, we're hopefully going to find out. But yeah, the Darksaber, it's a cool weapon. It actually looks like a sword, which is also really interesting. Anyway, finally, onto the last episode that we have access to at the time of this recording. But by the time this comes out, the 5th one will have probably surfaced as well. But that would be the Siege. So we're going back. Mando's like, you know what? My ship has been patched together by, like Joe said, nets and seaweed. It's probably not going to be good for interspace travel or whatnot. So he's like, we're going to go back to my buddies back on the planet that I'm blanking on, but it's a planet. It's kind of like Tatooine, but not. Yeah, it's fine. But he goes back and he sees Carl Weathers, who actually directed this episode, which I'm always interested when someone like stars in an episode, how they direct an episode. They're like, we're going to do this again because I didn't like how I did. Or something like that. I'm sure it's more than that. I'm sure there's second directors and stuff. But Carl Weathers, and then obviously, I can't think of her name right now. Gina. Why am I thinking?
Trevorrow or
no,
something?
that's Colin Trevorrow. Gina Carlano. Maybe I'm thinking
it doesn't matter.
Carlo.
Gina, the ex MMA fighter.
She's ex MMA. I'm gonna find out her name when we're talking about this. But anyway, so he goes back there and basically gets a better patch job on his ship, like an actual patch job, because Carl Weathers' character is kind of running the town now and can do that for him. But they end up finding out that there is some sort of like secret Imperial base that's still maybe in production of things, maybe not. And it's become kind of a concern for them, the citizens of the town. So they kind of go out with a strike team, those 3, plus the fish guy, Horatio Sands, from the first episode, who gets locked in carbonite. Might be one of the only Star Wars characters to ever ask for a bathroom, which is a fun little thing about him. And then they go off to go and kind of see what's up over here. And it turns into a bunch of stuff off screen as well too, but like Mando just killing a ton of people that you don't see, and then later on, him going back to save the child because he's worried that the Imperials are going to be after him again, and that other group of 3 trying to outrun some TIE fighters in a canyon, which I'm like, that would be tough to do.
It was cool. It was a cool sequence.
Yeah.
Did you get the vibe that their motives were less than what's the word I'm looking for? Not very honest. Like maybe there was some ulterior motive there for some reason.
Sure. By the way, Gina Carano. Yeah, I think it was a lot of that seems to kind of be this show where they see Mando and they're like, all right, you're wearing Beskar armor. You've got, some weapon training. You got some cool weapons on you right now too. And we know that you're good for a fight. So I feel like there's a lot of coercion that goes on quietly, or there's some subtle manipulation where they're like, well, we could really use you. And he's like, and that's why I feel like his ship needs to keep getting damaged, because there's a lot of we'll do this for you, but you have to help us. And he's like, it's or we saved this kid for you. You have to help us. And he's like, please stop. Because if he didn't have to owe anybody anything, he'd be like, yeah, good luck with your your crate dragon. In the beginning, he'd have been like, I'm just gonna kill you and take it. So good luck with that. But he's an honorable guy. That's Mando. But yeah, I guess a little bit for sure. Is that what you were getting at? Is you felt that way too?
Yeah. At first, he was kind of against it, and they were kind of like, but we need to do this, Mando. And okay, I was worried that they would get there, they infiltrate, and they're looking to blow the place up. And I was worried that they were there to be like, if we could gather all these weapons and these vehicles, we could, defend our town for eons or whatever. I was worried that there was going to be some ulterior motive that Mando wouldn't agree with, and it would put him in jeopardy, kind of a thing. But it did not come to pass.
Yeah. I'll say in this episode and the first episode, I feel like the jetpack has given him, it's not too much power, but there's sometimes where I'm like, you're on a different level. Because when he's fighting the crate dragon, he's flying around. When he has to go save the child at the end of that episode, he just takes off and he's faster than the ships and stuff. I'm like that jetpack's incredible.
Flight is somebody in predicaments such as he. Flight is a very great asset.
Yeah, I will say though, one of my favorite things this season, I forget if it's I think it's in season or episode 1, might be, but there's those people jump him, and I love it because it reminds me of a Western or something too. And they're here for the Beskar, they're here for the child, and he basically kills a bunch of them. And he's like, all right, the last guy, he's like, you know what, just let's not fight. He's like, you can have anything that I have, it's yours, just don't hurt the kid. And the guy's gonna grab the jetpack, and the guy grabs the jetpack, starts running away, and he just kind of looks at him. He's like, beep, beep, beep. Jetpack just takes off with the guy in holding onto it. guy falls and dies, like, and you're like, oh my gosh, like that's so mean. Like the one thing he could have taken that was gonna be like bad for him, and he's like, yeah, take that, dude. It's like giving him a thermal detonator and being like, take it, like have fun with that. So like,
yeah. Hey, what happened to his rifle with like the incinerating rounds?
Okay, I've been monitoring this, Joe. So he's got it, and he has like slugs or like whatever. He's got the casings on his bandolier, and I'm pretty sure it's been consistent with that the whole time. I think there's a really good chance that either A, he hasn't had a lot of chances to use it because it's like, you have to be out in the open, and he's doing a lot of fighting inside interiors and stuff.
Yeah, it's a big long rifle and all this and no mobility.
Yeah, B, it is something that is like hard to get ammunition for, because I too love that rifle, and I think of like, okay, he's got the vibroblade, he's got the blaster, he's got the long rifle and the flamethrower and the armor. That's kind of like his move. That's his stuff in the
What's
jetpack.
the vibroblade?
That is the thing. He's got a knife, and you see it briefly. You see it a couple of times, but it's briefly shown. He gets in a fight with another Mandalorian in season 1, and they both have them. And you can pull it out, and a vibroblade, basically, it's one of the only things that can like help fight against a lightsaber. It's basically like a knife or a blade that moves super fast, and it moves so fast that it can meet a lightsaber and like block it and fight it. But basically, if you get stabbed with it, it'll just like it should rip you apart. But because Star Wars isn't like rated M for mature, or it's not R, like if you stab someone with a vibroblade, it should be like a chainsaw. It should be like you should be able to just like fly through somebody with one of those things. So I would like to see him use that more, and I think he does. But a lot of times it just sticks in a person, so I'm not sure if you have to hold it, and that's how it works. Like,
which is fine. I mean, it's not, you stab somebody, even though like if it's moving that fast, it's almost like the Flash where he can do one of these through your chest.
It's a lot of that.
I mean, so it would be essentially, regardless of what you hit, it's going to be buttery smooth. Rib cage, sternum, or other, you're just going to be able to shing.
Yeah. Or like I said, it might be more like a chainsaw where it's like it's going fast, and it might not be that, so it might, like, if you don't have the force behind it, it might like knock off. So you might have to be like, you have to really kind of thing. I don't know, but they've been able to block lightsabers in the past. I don't know if that's Legends continuity now. I don't know. I thought it was an interesting point to bring up, and I'd like to see him use it more. But I think he's got his blaster, and he just has the one blaster, which I'm surprised he doesn't have two. But I think he's just like, I'm covered in armor, you can't hurt me in, so I'm just gonna. He just kind of walks around a corner. He's like boom, 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 boom. Like you're like, oh, I can't really fight that. But yeah, I love his set. I think that he's strong. He was strong before. I think the jetpack almost gives him too much of an advantage sometimes, because I'm like, he just flies away. Like he could just be like, takes the kid, just he'd be like, "Hey,
see ya."
Yeah. He's got the cable too. I'm sorry, I haven't seen him use the wrist cable a lot, but he does use the wrist cable. It's another classic Mandalorian weapon right there. I love Mando's kit, obviously, and Joe and Haley got me the shirt, so you can see right here. I like to show it off. Look, it says the Mandalorian. If you're listening to this, you can't hear anything, or you can't see anything. But yeah,
but it's cool. Trust us.
I will say, out of the 4 episodes we've had so far, I think I like 3 or 4 best, maybe. Just because there's a lot of action. There's a lot of good action.
Agreed. Plus, they have tie-ins to the overarching plot with the Empire, as well as other Mandalorians and the Dark Blade.
Yeah.
Love that stuff. The more it ties into the general world is great. Yeah. The Spider episode obviously doesn't hit home because it doesn't feel like it's as impactful as other episodes. And as cool as it wasn't bad. Let's make that clear.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel like it meant anything.
Sure. Yeah.
And if I'm missing something, comment below. But whatever.
I think it hurts more because it's 1 out of 8 episodes where like we're used to 20, 24 episode shows. And a lot of times in those shows, it's a whole episode that's almost self-contained. And the first 2 minutes and the last 3 minutes are like plot stuff for the season where they're like dealing with the big bad, but the rest of the episode has nothing to do with that. And so it's a little more forgivable because you're like, okay, like there's that kind of the breadcrumb or the carrot on the end of the stick. With this one, you're like, you want every episode to be like all killer, no filler. Like you want it to be just like...
Yeah, exactly. You don't want filler in something that's only 8 episodes long, albeit that they're a full 30, 35 minutes. There's no commercial ad in between.
Yeah.
So it's a true like 30, 35 minutes. I think they're like 35 on on average.
It's 35 to like 43, but the first episode was like an hour or something like that. It was like an hour or a little bit more, maybe hour.
Oh yeah, that one might have been a little longer. It did feel
longer.
like it.
And I think they've been
the
doing
the spider one was short.
Yeah, or it felt short too because there wasn't like a lot of talking. It's a lot of just like run for the spiders.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of an hour-long episode to start off with. Again, it reminds me a little bit of what Amazon's doing, where they do like they launch 3, and then they do like the week to week to week. This was like, we're gonna do once a week, but the first episode's gonna be a little bit longer for you because you've been waiting so long. Which, like you said at the end there, kind of ties in Grand Moff Gideon. Maybe we're looking into potentially, like, we're finding out some stuff that maybe that was kind of like a pseudo cloning facility. We got some information from that. Potentially, I think he might have worked on Camino, or he had like a badge or something that's Camino-esque from that guy. Talking about that they got blood from the child a long time ago, and maybe that's the Palpatine clones or the Snoke clones or something. I didn't know it.
And that Force-sensitive blood would help to, promote longevity of the clones they're creating of Palpatine or what have you, whatever they're doing.
Yeah, I would be totally fine if they make Emperor Palpatine's clone the main villain for this season, because that would be amazing to me. I would love to see old Palpy back, and Mando's like, I don't know who this guy is, but I have no interest in fighting him, and he's like, but I need the child, and he's just like, dude, you're not gonna get the child. Like, I would love to watch another Jedi versus, or a Force user versus Mandalorian in live action again, because we don't get that often. It's very rare.
Could be cool.
It could be great. It just, Force users are tough. You couldn't make him as powerful as Palpatine is in Rise of Skywalker, because that guy was ridiculous. You can't have him do that. But yeah, that, or I didn't know if they were working on some more, like, it almost looked like those tubes could have been the Snoke clones, but then at the very end there was kind of like it looked like black armor, and I was like, are they trying to do like a Vader recreation, or what are they trying to do? I have no idea. But that would be kind of cool too, is like because nobody knows that Vader betrayed the Emperor. If that was one of the kind of fail safes put in place besides Emperor Palpatine coming back, was like, hey, if both Vader and I get taken out, here's a way to bring us back. Because that would be kind of interesting too. Like, obviously they probably would have done that in the new the Force Awakens trilogy and stuff like that, but it would be kind of cool if like nobody knew that Vader had turned on him, and then Palpatine had like put in place like if we died, this is kind
bring
of like,
us back,
that could be kind of fun. Even though Vader at that time probably wouldn't be like super evil, he'd probably be like, I'm back. He'd be like, oh no, I was a Force ghost. Why did you do this to me? But yeah, I'm really interested to see where they go with it, and obviously they can do a lot of things. My only fear with the Mandalorian is they're branching out more and more to the Clone Wars stuff and to some original trilogy stuff, which I think is great. That's fine. But one thing I kind of really loved about season 1 is it felt like for a lot of it, it was its own thing. Like it didn't need to be like, oh, do you remember that time when, or like, do you remember that person? It was like, just, I like when they make new characters and new creations and things that are fun. But hey, if this gets us Mark Hamill back as Luke Skywalker, man, I don't care. I'm fine with that. I'm sure Mark would love to take another crack at this. Maybe a young Adam Driver will return. I don't know. Mando shows up to a Jedi. He could show up to a Jedi training school, man, and there might be a flipping young Ben Solo there. Mark my freaking words. I think it's going to happen. Cool. I think it's going to happen. They'll be like, it's Luke Skywalker's TV show with the younglings before he decides to kill one in its sleep. Man, it's not a good move.
Oh yeah, they could really go crazy though and tie this in with the movies very well. I mean, obviously it is already to a certain degree, but I mean, man, something like that would be kind of cool.
Do you like that it's?
I was thinking it before you said it, to be honest.
Yeah. Do you like that it's tying in more, or would you rather have it still kind of be its own thing?
No, I like it to all be related. I mean, it's such a galaxy far, far away and all. I mean, it's a galaxy, for crying out loud. But to have all the through lines, regardless if subtle or not, I enjoy that, and it is Star Wars, right? I mean, if there weren't if the Empire wasn't tied in some way or another, that would be kind of a slight letdown, and I want it to all be connected because, I'm so close to the films. I enjoy those a lot. I haven't gotten into the Clone Wars or Star Wars Rebels or anything like that. which I see their allure and their purpose. I guess I just didn't want to branch off from, the real tangible stuff to the animated stuff. Not that it's lesser, but I want to keep it, what's the word? There's a word for it.
Compartmentalizing.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I enjoy it, and I think it's appropriate, and it should. They could even do something to the effect, being at the time period that this falls, they could delve into what's going on right now. And honestly, from what we've seen thus far up to episode 4, I could see this somehow. Maybe it's not the main storyline, but like they do like some sort of nod or show how the First Order came to be.
Yeah, right? I think that's what it's coming to. I think they to some point, because they can't come out of nowhere, and obviously they have a ton of Imperial stuff. So the question is, like, how did the New Republic like not get all that stuff back when the Empire fell apart? But apparently parts of it didn't. I don't know. I just call myself the Empire. I wouldn't rename. I wouldn't rebrand. I'd be like, you know what? We're gonna keep going. I'd be like, we're gonna keep at it. Yeah, I think they'll probably do something like that. I wouldn't be surprised. But at the same time, I really hope one day we get like an Old Republic TV show that's thousands of years before all this stuff, or 1,000 years or 800 years or whatever. The only person in there might be Yoda that we would know, but the rest of it would be like not beholden to, like get to a certain point with like Vader and stuff. I love Vader, don't get me wrong, but I would love to see him create something else, like have tons of Sith, not just 2. Like I really want.
Yeah, or some of the old Sith lords,
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Cool I want to see Sith society at its peak, where everybody's learning from each other and trying to backstab each other. It's like this constant like political game where like all of them are like, oh, this is my master, he's pretty good, but I think next week I'll probably kill him because he's taught me everything I need to know. And I'll probably get an apprentice myself now because that'll probably be pretty sweet. Like, that's kind of how Sith society works. I would love to see that. Think like, again, kind of as they were working on it, like the directors of some of the Game of Thrones stuff were looking to maybe do TV or to do like movies like that. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that switch into a television show if those guys aren't. I don't think they're affiliated with anymore. But that would be. I think that could be really cool, especially for Disney Plus. Make like a PG Game of Thrones and Star Wars.
Well, yeah, I think they'll probably continue to go that direction with more Star Wars content because, I mean, you have the films, you have the Star Wars Rebels, and what was the other one again? I forget.
Clone Wars.
Clone Wars. I mean, and then the new movies and old. I mean, you click on the Star Wars tile to go to all the Star Wars content. Even the Lego stuff's in there, but that's a major draw for Disney Plus. Let's face it. And eventually, people are going to watch it so many times. It's like, okay, I've seen it all. And The Mandalorian has proven that it's a very successful business model to publish this on their streaming site, and if they keep adding content to that, people just keep clicking that tile over and over and over, and they keep coming back and paying for the subscription. And I think it's a good model, and I'm sure we'll get more there. Probably a lot more before we ever see any more Star Wars on the big screen, right? I would think
for a little while, especially with this kind of the age that we're in right now. I think Disney is totally fine with being like, we'll just put it right on our platform and have people keep coming back to it. I wonder if that'll change how movies are distributed too. Like we'll start to see movies come out in like 2 parts where they'll be like, hey, the first 45 minutes is on there now, or the first hour and 10 minutes is on there, and then the next hour and 20 minutes is on the next week. Or it's like, this is part 1 of the next Star Wars movie, and then there'll be part 2 in a week or a month or something. They can really do whatever they want, right? Yeah, anyway, I think we both agree. If you haven't watched season 2 yet of Mandalorian, you should definitely check it out. I think you probably should watch season 1. They do a recap in the beginning, but it is a lot of information to be thrown at you all at once. So,
it's only 8 episodes. You can't start season 2 without seeing season 1. I don't think.
Go check it out. If there's anybody who started season 2 without starting season 1, or brought a loved one or significant other or somebody else in on season 2, I'm really curious.
Shame on you. Go back.
No, I want to hear their reviews, because some people don't want to make the time for it. I just want to hear where that person's like, okay, there's a helmeted person and some other helmeted people showed up, and they've got a little green thing, and like, what's happening?
You miss out on quite a bit of character development with Mando and such, and you don't really have a feel for his personality either if you start out fresh in season 2.
I guess he hasn't really changed much, though. I guess he's a little softer now, but ever since he got the child in like the first episode, I feel like he's been pretty like for the most part, pretty straightforward. He's like, I just want to protect the kid. And he's like, if you get in my way, I'll kill you, but I'm kind of a nice guy. Like, you know what I mean? He wasn't like a hardened criminal in the beginning. That would have been great if he was just like, he's like, I'm bringing you in cold. Like, he talked to that fish guy. He would just been like, I'm not even going to deal with you, dude. I'm just going to, like, but they can't do that. He wouldn't be an easier hero to love. Anyway, that's the first 4 seasons. We'll probably swing back to this. We actually might have a special guest to come on and talk about the end or the entirety of season 2 when it's all done. Oh my gosh, what a tease for the future. A relatively decently well-known Star Wars enthusiast. The person's name actually might have Star Wars in it now. That person, he loves it, Star Wars so much. Anyway, but that means we get to move on to the next segment of the show, Joe, that I like to call, that you like to call, we both like to call.
Wait, what?
He's trying to find...
Oh
no.
Oh no, I know. Time killers.
Perfect. Anyway, it's the games we've been playing, the movies we watched, TV shows we've been viewing. Joe, please hit me with your time killers.
I don't know if we talked about it in previous podcasts as of late, but Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
Star Wars Battlefront 2.
I almost made that episode, the episode this week, but
yeah, well, hats off to you, Jimmy. You got your claws back into me and brought me back in, and I've been having a lot of fun with that. We've been playing a lot of co-op to like level up our characters and such, and it makes it a lot more fun when you can, get your characters better. So I've been having a lot of fun with that. Not to mention, without any new movies or content besides The Mandalorian out there, and I loved as opposed to some, I think more than most diehard Star Wars people, I really enjoyed the new trilogy. The Rey stuff. So I know some people it felt slightly flat for 'em, or at least maybe The Last Jedi did, but I enjoyed it, and I love having an avenue to get close to those characters again, and even from the original 3 films. So, and by that, what do I mean? I mean, like A New Hope, Return of the Jedi, Empire. But across the board, period, all the movies. I think it's great to have something that you can actually, it's not just watching a film.
Yeah.
In a video game, bringing those characters to life and being able to like play as them, have the abilities and interact with that character through your own control is great.
It is great.
But even in the more simpler veins, running as a stormtrooper or the rebel, things of that nature. I like it. It's still fun. It feels good. I think there are some improvements that could have been made when they, created that game. But for the most part, general consensus, I think it's a good game. And it's had time. It's been out there. I think it's refined enough. Mm-hmm. The quality is good, I think. I mean, you get a little bit of what do you call it? Like the environments, they look great, but sometimes you get a little bit of that. What do you call it? Come on, help me out here, Jimmy. It's like in Monster Hunter where you can run through the monster. Oh,
clipping. Like clipping through a thing? Like
so
gun clips through you?
My audio cut out again. This has been a great podcast for technical difficulties.
Yes.
Mostly on my end, all on my end. Yeah. But anywho, so that's been one of my main time killers. Jumping down the line, what else? I've been, my wife is a professional photographer, and she's been kind of finishing up her busy season, and not that this year was very busy at all compared to others with COVID and such, but she's been doing some things for her business and growing and things of that nature and new technology, and it's kind of, in recent years, I wasn't really so much into it, but the more we've been doing some own personal stuff with photography and whatnot, and I've been kind of taking a liking to it. I think, I am a creative type. I started with an art degree or going for art and industrial design and such, and then switched to construction, but I still have that creative vein. So yeah, I've been kind of getting into that. I've been watching a lot of YouTube and learning about like lenses and the types to use for what situations and how cameras actually work, difference between DSLR and mirrorless. And to her it's work, she's good at it, she does it all the time, so maybe not when work's done, maybe put it aside a little bit. But for me, I get into it and I want to learn a little bit, and maybe that'll transition to me maybe helping her out now and again, or us doing some fun personal projects. So yeah, I don't know. I found it interesting. It's been fun. YouTube, I found a guy, he's extremely popular. Peter McKinnon. And he's got some really cool videos and content that he does, and some of the stuff he does is really cool. But so yeah, lately I've been living on YouTube a little bit.
Nice.
There's so much information out there. It's a lot of fun. So, yep. But that has been about it for me. So how about yourself, Jimmy?
Yeah, Star Wars Battlefront 2. Well, first off, that's good. I think you have always been a creative and also a very talented artist, so I think you should do more of that sort of thing because you are very good at it. So I'm happy to see that you're doing that because, yeah, I think you guys would do some really cool stuff to work together. Then you can quit your day job. Then you can just be a photographer all the time. That'd be fun. Anyway, basically for me, it's been Star Wars Battlefront 2 along with you, obviously. I've been playing a bit. I've been trying to play Palpatine. I'm trying to get good at him. But yeah, I'm still learning. I don't know. I just like the game, and it's improved a lot over 3 years. So I'm excited to see that. I don't know if we'll ever get Battlefront 3. I don't know what you do in Battlefront 3, but yeah, I think it's an interesting, cool game, and I like going back to it. Especially runs really well on the Xbox Series X on my new TV, so I like playing it there, and it looks really nice and shiny. But for me, as far as YouTube, I have not been watching Peter McKinnon, even though, like I said, I'm glad that you're doing that because it sounds pretty sweet. For me, I'm obsessed with Disney stuff, as you guys know. So I've been watching, and I want to be better about this, but I've been watching a bunch of different Disney creators for a while. There's been three recently that I've been really getting into. One that I've been watching for a while now. But Prince Charming Dev and Paging Mr. Morrow, they're two vloggers who live and work out of Florida. And they're both really, really fun. They're always having a good time, and I don't know, just Dev, or Prince Charming Dev is his name. That's his YouTube name anyway. He's a former cast member, so he kind of has a little more insight to some of the Disney stuff that maybe we wouldn't get. But he's just about to crest 100,000 subscribers, so congratulations to that guy. That's very impressive. And then Paging Mr. Morrow, I found him more recently. He is just a really cheerful, nice guy. He likes to hang out with some other vloggers there, and it's kind of like a vlogger crossover. And they'll go on like a monorail pub crawl, Joe. They'll just like go to different like bars around the monorail loop, and they'll just go have drinks and have a good time. It's really fun. Cool. And then the last but not least, the people I've been they've been on the show twice now, and they're trying to get to 100,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed to them, please go do it. But Provost Park Pass, I've been watching them a ton because they're still putting out videos somehow, even though they live in Utah, and they used to go to Disneyland all the time to cover stuff for their channel, but they've been flying to Florida. They're down there again right now to cover some more Disney and to go to Universal, which is, I'm happy for them because they're just such fun, lovely people. They do a lot of live streams. They're super cheerful. It's fun to watch them react to things. And just people are just so gracious, and they just want to support these guys so much. So please go check them out. But again, they're very Disney focused. So if you don't like Disney, maybe not. But they're doing a huge giveaway. When they hit 100,000 subscribers, they're at 89,000. They're hoping to hit 100 by New Year's Day. And if they do that, they're going to give away 100 different gifts for free to 100 random subscribers, which I was like, that sounds great, but to me it sounds like a technical nightmare, because you're like, I'm sending you this thing, and the person's like, I don't want that thing, to be like, well, you're getting it, you know what I mean? You're like, yeah, no, but they're just amazing, and they were so much fun to have on the show again the other day, because we talked about Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I could talk about Raiders probably all day. Man, I really like that movie. But anyway, so I've been watching a lot of that, and I've been binging The Crown. The Crown. I didn't realize how good this freaking show was. This is one of the most high budget things that Netflix does. I didn't think it'd be interesting, but if you like Downton Abbey, it's like Downton Abbey turned all the way up. It's basically Queen Elizabeth II, I think, who is taking on the mantle of being the queen. And the first 2 seasons have a certain cast, and then they jump in time a little bit, so then the whole cast got switched out, which kind of hurt my heart a little bit. But then so season 3 and 4, they have a different cast of aged up people. But so like Helena Bonham Carter comes in season 3 to play Princess Margaret, when she was played by Vanessa Kirby, who you guys might know as one of the kind of villains in Mission Impossible Fallout. She's kind of the arms dealer, and she was also in Hobbs and Shaw. She's super good in that show. Like this show, she gets to be dramatic. She's fascinating to watch. She's really, all the actors are so good in this show. They have some Game of Thrones alumni. That old guy, Joe, again, that I can't remember his name. He's really good. He shows up in season 3. You know who I'm talking about. He was in Dracula Untold.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the name.
Either way, he
would have been.
I'm gonna look it up.
I can't remember. You have the Targaryens, and then you have, what was the name of the Lion family?
That
Peter
one.
Dinklage's family. It was his dad. I can't remember his name, but
Charles
I know who you're talking about.
Charles Dance. That guy. Like his face,
a big deal.
He's just really good. He's just a super talented. He gives me kind of Ian McKellen vibes a little bit, like Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, like mix, but kind of like evil too. Like, and I'm not saying that he himself is evil. He just has that look. He can just put that face on where you're like, oh my gosh.
True.
Yeah, check out The Crown if you guys are interested. Especially season 1 and 2 were really quick to get through. But season 3 has been kind of more episodic, where it kind of focuses in on like one character and one kind of specific time in their life or a different circumstance. And I don't know why it's so compelling, but it's just like I said, it's like Downton Abbey also kind of meets West Wing. It's like, what is the Queen's day-to-day life like, and what are like the big struggles of just family scandals, and like, oh my gosh, if the people found out about this. And it's like a lot of like, it's gonna ruin the crown and the monarchy. So it's like fun for me to watch as an American, because like I'm not as beholden to it, but it's still fascinating to watch that.
Sure.
And but check it out. It's good. It's really well done, and it has I love seeing that budget, man. You see it. You're like, these sets. You're like, oh my god. Like, I'm trying to think.
What is that streaming on?
It's on Netflix. They must have a huge soundstage for these sets, Joe, because it's like recreations of Buckingham Palace. I'm pretty sure, because I'm nearly positive they're not filming in there. So like, I'm like looking at these things. I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, they were like, put the money into it. But yes, excellent cast. Both the casts, all the casts, they're fantastic. So check out The Crown, and those other YouTubers I talked about. So very different ends of the spectrum there. Anyway, we're gonna wrap up with just one community feedback and/or question. This one comes in from Ryan, Joe, and I asked everybody to kind of write in with their kind of thoughts and feelings on this few episodes of The Mandalorian so far. Layman's Terms over on Discord says, well, if I must. And I must. So far, season 2 has been great. I can't wait to see where it takes us in the next episode. So he just likes it. He's just been enjoying it. He's been watching it with friends, and a lot of people watch it with friends. That's a good thing. You can watch it with friends, watch it alone, watch it anytime you want to atone. I don't know what you're atoning for, but I just feel like it rhymed. Anyway, if you have a question or a topic for the show, please write into us. You can use the hashtag Critical Podcast, and you can tweet at us. You can tweet at me. I am at JimmyGood013. Or you can tweet at GoCritical. If you'd like to tweet at Joe, who's definitely on Twitter all the time and definitely knows his name that he just changed, even though I know what it is.
Yeah.
Joe,
I don't have it memorized anymore. It's Joe Lever _627. Lever, just like beaver, only with an L.
Excellent. Also, I fail to mention this all the time. We do have a Gmail account, so if you want to like send in a longer comment or a longer question that's more than 240 or 60 characters or whatever the heck it is, 280. I don't remember. What was it, Joe? What's the character limit on Twitter? I forget. Anyway.
Oh, I don't even know.
It's just send one to gocriticalreviews@gmail.com. Please send us an email. I would love to get an email from you guys. That would be amazing. I know we have some audio listeners out there, so maybe you're not on Twitter or whatever else. We want to hear from you. Seriously, please write into us. We want to hear your beautiful, beautiful voices, which obviously aren't voices because they're just texts. They're letters, because that's how the internet works. I guess you could send an audio message, but anyway, regardless, if you want to help support the show, there's a ton of ways to do so. Please check out the links down in the description for our YouTube video. But if you're not like actually watching this, you can, if you're listening in, we have an Instagram, we have a TikTok. I think those might be both at Go Critical. We have a website if you have to kind of catch back up, which is Go Critical, or actually, yeah, it's gocriticalreviews.com. And then we have a Spreadshirt. So if you want to go buy some t-shirts and stuff, that's a great place to do so. But seriously, the best thing you can do for us is really just share us around. Just share us with people, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. Let us know how we're doing. Tell us stuff like that. And then finally, thank you, a huge thank you. And this episode is sponsored by our patrons over on patreon.com/criticalreviews. Thank you guys so much. The only reason the show continues the way it does is because of your lovely patrons. And maybe if I wait long enough, Joe, I'll just save up all that money and we'll just get us a mixer. We'll just get a little mixer and we'll just put those little things in all the time. I'll just be beep, 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 beep.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. We don't even need a mixer. It's like we already got one. Anyway, also let us know if you got to the end of the show. It'll be #soundbites. #soundbites. That's bites with a Y. So let us know if you like Joe's mixer or his little what is that even called? Is that an app that you have on your iPad?
It's just an app I downloaded really quick.
What's it called?
I thought it would be fun getting in here,
Yeah,
sound.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. It makes us more like a radio show. Hopefully someone's listening to this on their commute to work, or maybe not commute to work because they're just at home, but it's like, hello, welcome everybody, welcome. Yeah, but anyway, Joe, thank you so much for sitting here talking Mandalorian season 2 with me. It's a pleasure as always, my friend.
The pleasure is all mine.
Excellent. Well, fine then. You can have it. I don't want it. I'm just kidding. Has anyone ever retorted with that before? I love it. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening and watching. We want to hear from you, so send us your feedback. And until next time, just remember to adapt and overcome. Bye-bye. People who are listening to this are going to be so confused.